and today we are joined by Mystie Winkler. Misty is the owner of Simply Convivial, and she's also a School A sister. And I asked her to come on because she is releasing her book, Simplified Organization, this month. And I have been waiting for this book for years to be at my bedside so that I can underline, highlight, and basically dog ear the whole thing, just because the work that Misty does helps us as homemakers really value the work that we're doing in the home and helps us shift the attitude that the culture tries to tell us about how, if we could just do everything faster, then we could get to the important work. But Misty's book and her work helps us internalize the truth that God shares with us. So, Misty, thank you so much for coming on. And I have so many questions for you, but let's just start with you and your family. Can you just tell us a little bit about your homeschool? How many kids are you homeschooling? I think you have some graduates too.
Do, yes. So big life stage changing times. So my husband and I were both homeschooled ourselves. We're both homeschool graduates. And we have 5 kids, and we live in Moscow, Idaho. And we have 2 graduates and 3 still at home that we're homeschooling still. So 2 high schoolers and a middle schooler.
Okay.
So, at home.
Okay. Yeah. So just for comparison, I think your youngest might be as old as my oldest. How is
Yeah,
your
she just
youngest?
turned 11.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I've got one a little bit. My oldest is 14. So your
Okay.
youngest, still pretty young.
So
Okay. So, but just started middle school, I guess, this year.
yeah, 6th grade. I don't know. I think that, yeah.
Right. Ish.
Ish.
Who
Always ish.
knows? I know. Yeah.
Yes, and my
Well,
oldest son
fun.
just got married this last summer. So
And you are very busy. So if we just look at you on the internet, we think that you're spending all your time creating content and sharing about your life, but it sounds like you also are homeschooling your children and cleaning toilets.
yeah, that still does have to happen.
So I think you share a lot of how you do get so much done in Simply Convivial, which is your membership site. And there's also a lot going on over at School A Sisters. Um, but I think you just have a really great pulse on what we as moms are facing when it comes to home management. And you've done such a great job of pulling from, as I was reading through your book, I was like, oh, there's some Aristotle in here. Here's some Socrates. And then also just that real, just normal, modern, this is hard. Like we actually have to do the work. So I would love to hear a little bit about what you're seeing is happening with moms, and then just kind of how we can reorient our attitudes a little bit toward homemaking.
Yeah. So I always wanted to be a wife and mom when I was growing up. I was homeschooled. I was the oldest of 7. And I said, well, being a wife and mom is what I want to be. I got married at 19. So it was like right on target. Like, this is where we're going. This is what we're going to do. And I already could cook. I'd been helping with chores a lot. My mom had twins when I was 11. So I helped out a lot. I changed a lot of diapers. I figured I was probably set. I was going to be ready. I was going to rock this thing. I was going to nail it. And I was ready to just jump in, get some systems in place, and totally nail the homemaking motherhood thing. And then I didn't.
What happened?
Well,
you're so set up. I was in public school, surely.
I know I didn't have any of the excuses people have. And it was still hard. But what I came to realize is that even in my desire to do a good job, I actually despised the work. Really, it came down to a bad attitude about doing the housework. It was something, okay, it was my job to do, but all my systems were attempts at really trying to get out of doing the work at all. But I thought that if I had the right system, then it wouldn't require effort on my part or attention. I could read all the books I wanted to read or do all the things I wanted to do, and the management cleaning side of things would basically go away if it was just set up right. And it
It
just
doesn't go away.
doesn't go away. And things just kind of kept devolving and getting worse and worse over the years um because I was trying to put in as little effort as possible and still survive. um it got things got pretty bad.
Yeah.
And the turning point wasn't a system or a new chore chart, a new plan. I was great at making new plans, but the the turnaround for me was a long drawn out process of changing my attitude about the work itself and appreciating it for what it was. And there were a couple, I mean, there was lots of scripture that convicted me, and then it felt like every conversation I had with anyone for a time came back to house cleaning or home management or something. It was like I couldn't escape it. So I was still I was like in my late 20s when God was really working on me and with this. And then Cindy Rollins, I was reading her blog online and following her, and she mentioned a line of poetry that's T.S. Eliot, and it's longer, but the really convicting part was dreaming of systems so perfect that no one will need to be good. And then I realized, like, oh, actually, that's been me all these years. I've been plotting out the systems so that I won't have to be good. And that's
Right.
why this is not working.
Right. Yeah, so you just every in your book and also on your blog, I noticed there's this sense of you're not just telling me like, here's what you should do. It's out of a space of I've really tried hard to figure this out because this is not easy for me either.
Yeah.
So let's so because this was hard and I just really relate to what you've shared as far as just that attitude. And I think part of that attitude comes from our fallen nature and also just our culture telling us that, there's certain things that you need to be doing that are actually more important and
Yes.
nobody's valuing the care of the work at home. And of course, we've decided to stay home, we've decided to homeschool the kids. Um, but and I really found this with my own home is that my children were a mirror of my attitude about the household work.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
why are we like this upset about cleaning up after dinner? This should
Mhm.
not like this is just a normal part of human existence." So I just love the things that you've brought in with your book. And then also in your courses, you help walk us through those heart issues. Um, One of them, and I'm just going to look through here on your table of contents of the book, is perfectionism.
Yeah.
And of course, being overwhelmed, but I would love to hear a little bit about how we handle perfectionism because we also um, just in our homeschooling, we do this, but in our homemaking, we do this too, where it's like, I'm not going to do it if I can't do it perfectly.
Yeah.
Or so there's just like, we never start.
Yes.
But yeah, just how do we even confront that? The perfectionism and sometimes I think we don't even know that's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that was me for a long time. I thought that the people who struggle with perfectionism are the people who are like quilting and actually keeping a clean house because they're, working so hard and being so careful to do it
Right.
perfectly. And then what they're doing is more perfect than what I'm doing.
Right.
And so because that was my picture of what perfectionism looked like, was maybe people being stressed out and maybe doing not very much so that everything they did was just so. I thought that was perfectionism, and it is a kind of perfectionism, but there's another kind of perfectionism. That struggle can come out by being super controlling or by giving up, basically. And
Hmm.
that was the trap that I had fallen into in my mid 20s,
Mhm.
was that because my systems were not working out and did not actually do the work for me, they didn't keep things every running smoothly without me. Therefore, I just kind of gave up. And I spent a while thinking um, that my planning and my scheming um, should be about minimizing the amount of effort that I put in. And if I can just keep things going with minimal effort, why would I put more effort or time or attention into it? Which was showing that I didn't value the work, actually, even though it was the work I had chosen. And on paper or by words, I would say this is the most important work that a mom can be doing. But by my actual time, attention, and affections, I hated it.
So where was the shift? How did
Um,
you like what because I or how do you honestly in your courses you walk us through that.
yeah.
So how do we get out
Um,
of that?
well, it starts by recognizing what's really going on. And so when I realized that I wasn't putting forth effort because I didn't want to mess up, like I wanted it to be perfect, and I wanted anything that I did, that I put time and attention into, to be amazing and impressive.
Mm.
And housework was never something that was gonna be very impressive. Even when it's done, it's the kind of thing
Right.
people just take for granted.
Oh,
So,
yeah, like
um
dusting.
right. No one's like, "You are an amazing duster."
No, they just see the dust and go, "Oh, that's gross."
You only notice if you don't do it. So my perfectionism was preventing me from even getting started. And then when I did decide to take things in hand, I went all out, like spent the whole day doing like a frenzied clean.
Yeah,
And
which is not sustainable.
it's not, yeah, you can't do that every day. And part of the point is, doing it so well that you won't have to do it again.
Right, and
And so
then
then you
somebody
take the
uses
day
the
off, and that
sink or
is
something.
the boom and bust cycle.
Yeah.
And um and so the boom and bust cycle is a sign of perfectionism, where you want
Mm.
your effort to have a real visible payoff,
Yeah.
which really isn't possible until everything devolves to the point where the mess is terrible, so that when you clean it, then people notice.
Right.
And there isn't that kind of payoff or mm, yeah, just visible result when you are keeping a steady um, just heartbeat of the home going, where things are being
Right.
maintained regularly. It's not then noticeable. And so you don't get that kind of affirmation or just um, the kind of effect that perfectionism wants an end result that looks impressive.
Well, I think you hit the heart of it, is that it has to do with what our aim is, what is our goal.
Right.
In your book, you mention um, pursuing hospitality,
Mhm.
that this idea that we want to be hospitable to our husband, our children, that we
Mhm.
want to be able to welcome people into our home and we want everyone to live well. It's not just this survival
Yeah.
mode that we're trying to, I don't know. I just feel it from the culture. It's like, "Oh, honey, it's okay. You don't have to do all of that, go lay down." And
Yeah.
it's like, "But I want more than that. I want to I want to take pride in the work that I do, but also I don't want to have to think about it all the time." I think the other thing that I noticed about your book is, if we understand, because I know you've read Charlotte Mason's
Mhm.
some of her books, and she talks about the importance of habit training,
Yeah.
and the importance of habit, and how, as we get into these habits, they actually become they're just, you're not thinking about them. Like, you're getting dressed in the morning, you're eating food, like, we're not laboring over these decisions. And you mentioned in your book that, your husband, it was like your house was a mess, you did the cleaning frenzy, and then you had to decide what you guys were going to eat for dinner. Like, to me, that sounds so stressful. Now that I have a system in order and I understand how much freedom it gives me and my family, if we all know what we're gonna eat for dinner. And, I wanted to mention this. So you taught me how to use a calendar. I did not know. I think you and I have a similar personality type, but I do love organization. I do love some system books.
I mean, I do too.
But I just did not understand, and it's like we don't know if we're not taught, and if we have to learn everything ourselves, it just takes longer. Like you're saying, it takes 10 years before you start figuring out what to do. And what you've provided with, you've got Work Your Plan, which is so helpful, but then you've got also the Mom's Weekly Review, that starts in December. Where, can you explain a little bit about that? Because I started doing a weekly review and now I can't live without it. Um, and I've even started doing like an evening review, just
Nice.
we're reviewing and planning. But it's not, again, I think that the thought within our culture is that a person who is super OCD or really on it is going to do these practices. And what I was telling a friend of mine is that this is not what's natural to me, but I need it to thrive. I have 7 children and I'm trying to organize them and not yell at everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And these are tools that allow us to live together in harmony. It's not to do that. I don't know. It's not about me and a kingdom I'm trying to build, right?
Right.
So yeah, could you tell us a little bit about your Mom's Weekly Review that you've got starting in December?
Yeah, I think, um, the the real the shift that I had to make and that I try to help other ladies make is that it really isn't about the tool, the habit, the calendar, the practice, like a weekly review alone that makes the big difference. Like if I just find the secret, then
Right.
it's all going to be great.
Yeah.
But it is about shifting our mindset about the work and about our job and about the purpose of it all and the nature of it all. And when our attitude and our mental picture, our mental story about what's actually going on shifts, then we're able to use all the tools and the practices properly. And they aren't the thing in themselves that's doing the work. They're just the ways that we do the work and that we invest in our people and the way that we're effective in our home. And I think a big struggle for all of us moms is that we keep a lot in our head.
Mm.
Where we every time we look around the house, we see the things that we could be doing or we should be doing, or it reminds us of some, and so our mind is always spinning.
Right.
And so a lot of the practices come down to just taking pieces out of the spin cycle in your
Mhm.
brain
Mhm.
so that it's not overstuffed and you can kind of calm the mental noise
Mm.
so that you can see what's really going on and make some decisions ahead of time and be prepared. And it isn't about control where we're um, deciding how the future is going to happen. It's about preparing ourselves for dealing with whatever might happen.
Right.
And so the mom's weekly review is a baby step process to take 15 to 30 minutes. And it starts with 15 minutes and works up to 30 or 45, depending on what you want to do during your weekly review. But the weekly review I learned from David Allen in Getting Things Done. And he says take 2 hours. And I'm like, no one's doing that.
No
We
one
have
has
no
that kind of time.
hours to close. So 15 minutes to just look at the calendar and make what I call notes to self. I found that's a great way to communicate that this is not an elaborate plan. It's not about getting everything in just the right form or just the right format so that
Mhm.
it works. It's just taking a few minutes to figure out where you're at, figure out what's coming and what you can do to take a few steps to be ready
Mhm.
for it.
Right.
And that's enough to really shift your interactions with your life and your people and become more and more effective where you're at.
Yeah. One of the things too that I found that I struggle with is the idea that the tasks are more important than the people.
Yeah.
This utilitarian mindset of let's get this stuff done. I mean, I see it in my homeschool, we're not able to enjoy, I'm reading all these books and it's like nobody enjoyed it, nobody listened. We weren't even able to just play with those ideas because, then I'm on to the next thing and it's like, no, no, that's not why we're doing this. And I think that you have the organize your attitude course that helps move us away from that, helps also just get to the root. And you're just asking a lot of questions and you're kind of giving us some roots for shifting our mindset. A lot of it's just mindset work,
Yeah.
because it's if we think properly, then we will act properly. Um, so I've really loved that. So let me see. Are there anything else? So you've got your book coming out November. So when this releases, it'll already be out.
Mhm.
The simplified organization. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book? I know we talked about it earlier.
I have my print proof copy here.
Ooh, how
So, I'm
fun.
excited. So, yeah,
Yeah.
simplified organization, learn to love what must be done, and I love the size that it turned out, like, it's a real
Yeah.
book, but it's not a tome.
Yeah. How many
And
pages did it end up being?
it is, 244,
Ooh, that's
and there's plenty of
substantial.
so there are 6 steps, and that's like the middle part 2, section 2 of the book, but every
Oh,
step then
okay.
gets its own page.
Okay,
So there's a baby step
great.
instruction and a checklist that goes with that all.
And did I hear there's a study guide coming out with it?
Yes, the
That'll
study
be
guide should be out in June of 24.
okay. Oh,
And
fun.
that will
Okay.
help people do it, like, with a group,
With a
get a
group.
bunch of friends together and just work
Okay.
through and have your own little personal accountability group.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm
It's fun.
definitely putting that on the book club list. So that'll be good.
So,
Well,
yeah, it
Misty,
does
oh, go ahead.
it does boil down to your mindset, and the first step in the book and in my courses is tell yourself a true story, and that's just an ongoing process. Sometimes we look for the quick fix, the piece of information, like, then that's going to change everything once I learn the right thing or do the right thing. And housework or homeschooling is just the work that God is doing in us to sanctify us and grow us and make us more like Him and give us opportunities to imitate Him. And it's
Mm,
just always going to be ongoing growth. So it
mm,
isn't about just finding the right fix that's gonna make
Mm.
everything better from here forward. It's being willing to change and grow and go through that process.
So we are going to leave links down below for where you can find Misty, for her membership site, and then also the book. And there's also some awesome stuff going on over at Scholay Sisters. So check all those links out. Thank you so much for joining me, Misty. And I can't wait to get my hands on that hard copy book. All right. We'll see you next
Yes, thank
time.
you so much, Joyce. It's been fun.
You bet.